The dire warning. Prelude to war. The Galactic Empire had always regarded itself as the pinnacle of civilization, an unstoppable force that ruled the stars with an iron fist. But despite its vast territories and numerous conquests, it had never encountered a race quite like humanity. The Emperor and his advisors saw humans as mere primitives, a young species that had only recently ventured into the stars. The Empire's expansionist ambitions naturally led them to target Earth, confident in their superiority. The warning Commander Baker, a seasoned leader of Earth's defense forces, had just received a transmission from Corvus, a defecting Hazari, one of the Empire's elite races. Corvus was an outlier, a rare voice of reason among the otherwise ruthless Hazari. He came with a warning that chilled Baker to the bone. The Galactic Empire was preparing a full-scale assault on human space, underestimating the ferocity and tenacity of the human spirit. "They think they can crush us like insects," Corvus said, his voice tight with concern. "But they have no idea what they're about to face. They don't understand humans." Commander Baker's jaw tightened as he absorbed the news. He had seen battle before, and he knew what was at stake. This wasn't just another skirmish, it was an existential threat to all of humanity. If the Empire wanted a war, they would get one they would never forget. Mobilization. Immediately, Baker sounded the alarm. Across Earth and its colonies, fleets were mobilized and defensive systems were brought online. The greatest minds of humanity came together to prepare for the impending storm. Engineers worked around the clock to enhance Earth's military technology, while scientists developed new weapon systems designed to counter the Empire's anticipated assault. In underground bunkers and high-tech labs, the most brilliant and creative minds on Earth worked tirelessly. The sense of urgency was palpable. This was a fight for survival, and humanity would not go down without a fight. A gathering of allies. Meanwhile, whispers of the impending war spread throughout the galaxy. The Empire's vassal races and protectorates, who had long suffered under the Hazari's dominance, began to question the might of their overlords. Could it be that the humans, a species so underestimated, would be the ones to finally challenge the Empire's rule? Baker reached out to these oppressed races, offering them a chance to join humanity in resisting the Empire. Some answered the call, eager to see the Hazari humbled. Others remained hesitant, watching and waiting to see if humanity would truly stand a chance against the Empire's seemingly invincible forces. Final preparations. In the final days before the Empire's assault, Earth was a hive of activity. Soldiers drilled relentlessly, practicing for the battles to come. Pilots prepared their ships, knowing that their skills could make the difference between victory and defeat. Baker himself worked day and night, coordinating with his generals, refining strategies, and ensuring that every possible advantage was in place. As the deadline approached, a palpable tension filled the air. The calm before the storm was almost unbearable, but Baker knew that once the first shot was fired, there would be no turning back. The Empire would learn that humanity was not to be trifled with. This was their home, and they would defend it with everything they had. Finally, the moment arrived. The Empire's warships appeared on the edge of human space, their sheer size and number overwhelming. But Baker and his forces were ready. As the enemy ships crossed into Earth's territory, Baker issued a single chilling command to the entire fleet: engage. The first strike, the clash, begins. The moment Baker gave the command, space itself seemed to come alive with the fury of battle. The Galactic Empire's fleet, vast and imposing, advanced like an unstoppable tide, confident in their overwhelming power. Their ships, bristling with advanced weaponry, surged forward, intending to crush the human resistance in a single devastating strike. But humanity had prepared for this moment. Hidden among the stars, in the shadow of asteroids and behind cloaked satellites, Earth's fleet lay in wait. As the Empire's ships drew near, Baker's forces struck with surgical precision. Advanced human fighters darted through the void, their nimble forms outmaneuvering the Empire's lumbering battleships. The first volley of fire came from the humans, a coordinated barrage of missiles and energy weapons that lit up the dark expanse of space. An unexpected counterattack. The Empire's commanders, confident in their superiority, were caught off guard. Their ships were designed for overwhelming force, not agility. As human vessels weaved through their formations, delivering hit-and-run strikes, the Empire's forces struggled to adapt. The Hazari had never faced an enemy like this. A foe who didn't just stand and fight but struck from the shadows, then vanished before a counterattack could be mounted. On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Baker watched the tactical displays with a grim satisfaction. His forces were holding their own, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Empire would soon adjust its tactics, and when they did, the real battle would begin. The battle heats up. As the initial shock of the human attack wore off, the Empire's fleet began to regroup. The Hazari commanders barked orders, reorganizing their ships into defensive formations. Massive cruisers moved to the front lines, their shields absorbing the incoming fire, while smaller, more agile fighters were deployed to hunt down the human ships that had been wreaking havoc on their formations. The void was filled with the bright flashes of exploding ships and the streaks of laser fire. The humans fought with a desperation born of the knowledge that there was no retreat, no surrender. Every ship, every soldier was fighting for their home, for their very survival. But the Empire was not easily beaten. As their tactics adapted, the tide of battle began to shift. The Hazari's larger ships, with their overwhelming firepower, started to press forward, forcing the human fleet to fall back. One by one, human ships were picked off, their valiant crews fighting to the last. A desperate move. Seeing the momentum shift, Baker knew he had to act. The human fleet couldn't hold out much longer under this relentless assault. He needed to find a way to strike at the heart of the Empire's fleet, to deliver a blow so devastating that it would force them to reconsider their invasion. Captain Harrison, Baker called over the comms to one of his most trusted pilots, "I need you to take your squadron and hit their command ship. If we can take out their flagship, we might just buy ourselves some time." Harrison, a veteran pilot known for his fearless tactics, responded immediately. "Copy that, Commander. We're on it." With a quick series of maneuvers, Harrison's squadron broke away from the main fleet, making a beeline for the heart of the Empire's formation. Their target was the massive Hazari flagship, a behemoth of a ship bristling with weapons and surrounded by a protective screen of smaller vessels. The assault on the flagship. As Harrison's squadron approached, the Hazari ships opened fire, filling the void with deadly beams of energy. But Harrison's pilots were the best of the best. They dodged and weaved through the firestorm, their ships dancing through the chaos with unmatched precision. "Stay tight, everyone," Harrison ordered. "We need to get in close before they can focus their fire on us." As they closed in on the flagship, the true scale of their target became apparent. The Hazari command ship was a fortress in space, its hull nearly impervious to conventional weapons. But Harrison wasn't about to let that stop him. "Deploy the bombers," he commanded. "We're going to punch a hole in that thing." From the underbellies of the human fighters, specialized bombers were released, each one carrying a payload designed to penetrate even the toughest of defenses. As they approached the flagship, the bombers unleashed their charges, a series of powerful explosions rippling across the Hazari ship's shields. For a moment, it seemed like the assault might fail. The flagship's shields held, absorbing the brunt of the attack. But then, a critical point was reached, and with a blinding flash, the shields overloaded and failed. The bombers pressed their advantage, delivering a final devastating strike that breached the flagship's hull. Victory, for now. The explosion rocked the entire battlefield. The Hazari flagship, now critically damaged, began to list and lose power. Inside, the Empire's commanders scrambled to maintain control, but it was clear that the battle had turned against them. On the bridge of his ship, Commander Baker watched as the Hazari fleet faltered. Their command structure was in disarray, and without the flagship to coordinate their efforts, the Empire's forces began to retreat. "Press the attack," Baker ordered. "Don't give them a chance to regroup." The human fleet, sensing victory, surged forward. The Hazari, now on the defensive, were forced to fall back. Their assault on human space temporarily halted. But Baker knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would return, and next time, they would be ready. But for now, humanity had won a crucial victory, one that would buy them the time they needed to prepare for the battles yet to come. The cost of victory, aftermath of the battle. As the remnants of the Hazari fleet retreated into the void, the battlefield fell silent. The once dark expanse of space was now littered with debris, the remains of countless ships floating aimlessly, a testament to the ferocity of the battle. Amid the wreckage, human rescue teams worked tirelessly to recover survivors and salvage what they could from the fallen vessels. Commander Baker stood on the bridge of his command ship, gazing out at the scene. Victory had been hard won, but the cost had been steep. Scores of ships had been lost, and many of Earth's best pilots and soldiers had made the ultimate sacrifice. The reality of their situation weighed heavily on Baker's shoulders. While they had managed to repel the first wave, he knew that the Galactic Empire would not take this defeat lightly. They would return, stronger and more determined, and humanity needed to be ready. Honoring the fallen back on Earth, the mood was somber. The names of the fallen were read out in a solemn ceremony broadcasted across the planet and its colonies. Families mourned, and friends gathered to remember those who had given their lives in the defense of their home. The entire human race had been galvanized by the battle, the reality of their precarious position in the galaxy now painfully clear. Commander Baker, in his address to the world, spoke not just of the bravery and sacrifice of the soldiers who had fought, but also of the work that lay ahead. "We have shown the galaxy that we are not to be underestimated," he said, his voice firm but weary. "But this battle is just the beginning. The Empire will return, and we must be prepared to face them again. We owe it to those who have fallen to ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain." Regrouping and rebuilding. With the immediate threat repelled, humanity turned its attention to rebuilding and preparing for the next assault. The debris from the battle was gathered and repurposed, the wreckage of Hazari ships studied to gain insights into their technology. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, developing new defenses, more advanced weaponry, and faster, more agile ships. The losses sustained in the battle also highlighted a critical need: more soldiers. Across Earth and its colonies, recruitment efforts were intensified. Young men and women, inspired by the bravery of those who had fought in the first battle, eagerly signed up to defend their home. Military academies worked overtime to train the next generation of pilots, engineers, and soldiers. A call for allies. As Earth prepared for the next encounter with the Empire, Commander Baker knew that humanity could not stand alone. The Empire was vast, with resources and manpower that dwarfed Earth's own. To have any hope of survival, humanity needed allies. Baker reached out once again to the other species under the Empire's rule, appealing to their desire for freedom. Some, emboldened by humanity's victory, were willing to join the fight. Others, still fearful of the Empire's power, hesitated. Baker understood their hesitation but pressed on, knowing that every ally, no matter how small, could make a difference in the coming war. Meanwhile, Baker also sought out neutral species, those who had managed to stay out of the Empire's reach. He offered them protection and the promise of a fair and just alliance, one built on mutual respect rather than domination. Slowly but surely, a coalition began to form, a fragile alliance of species united by a common enemy. A hidden threat. As the preparations continued, reports began to filter in from the fringes of human space. Small colonies and outposts had gone dark, their communications suddenly cut off. Scouts sent to investigate found only desolation, signs of battle but no survivors, and no trace of the enemy. The Empire's hand was suspected, but the exact nature of the threat remained unclear. Commander Baker, ever vigilant, could not afford to dismiss these reports. He dispatched special reconnaissance teams to the affected areas, hoping to gather intelligence on this new threat. What they discovered sent chills down Baker's spine. The Empire's new weapon. The reconnaissance teams reported back with disturbing findings. The Empire had deployed a new type of weapon, one unlike anything humanity had encountered before. This weapon didn't simply destroy, it erased. Entire colonies had been wiped out, leaving no trace of life, no wreckage, no bodies, just empty, barren land where thriving communities had once stood. The implications were terrifying. If the Empire had developed a weapon that could completely obliterate entire populations without a trace, then humanity was in even greater danger than they had realized. The need for new strategies and defenses became even more urgent. A race against time. With the knowledge of the Empire's new weapon, the urgency of humanity's preparations increased tenfold. Scientists and military strategists worked around the clock, trying to devise a way to counter this new threat. But time was running out. The Empire was regrouping, and it was only a matter of time before they launched their next attack, this time with the full might of their new weapon. Commander Baker knew that humanity was facing its greatest challenge yet. The first battle had been a victory, but it had also been a warning. The Empire would stop at nothing to conquer Earth, and only by standing together with their allies could humanity hope to survive. As the final preparations were made, Baker stood once more before his people. "We have faced the darkness and emerged victorious," he said, his voice filled with determination. "But the fight is not over. The Empire is coming, and they bring with them a weapon of unimaginable power. But we will not be cowed. We will not surrender. We will stand and fight. And we will show the galaxy once again that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." The calm. Before the storm, strategic repositioning. With the knowledge of the Empire's new devastating weapon, humanity's leadership knew they could no longer rely on traditional defensive tactics. The Empire's ability to erase entire colonies without leaving a trace had shifted the balance of power dramatically. In response, Commander Baker and his team of strategists devised a plan to disperse Earth's forces, making it more difficult for the Empire to target them all at once. Earth's fleet was repositioned, with key military assets and personnel being moved to hidden bases across the solar system and beyond. These secret locations, established in the far reaches of human space, were designed to be as undetectable as possible. Mobile command centers were established, allowing Earth's leadership to remain agile and respond to threats from anywhere in the galaxy. Advanced technological development. In hidden research facilities, humanity's best scientists pushed the boundaries of what was possible, working day and night to create new technologies that could counter the Empire's deadly weapon. They experimented with advanced shielding systems, capable of withstanding unprecedented levels of energy, and developed cloaking devices that could render entire fleets invisible to enemy scanners. One of the most significant breakthroughs came from an unexpected source: quantum entanglement communication. This new technology allowed for instantaneous communication across vast distances, bypassing the usual delays caused by the speed of light. With this advancement, Earth's scattered forces could stay in constant contact, coordinating their efforts in real time, regardless of their location. Building alliances. As humanity's technological capabilities grew, so too did its network of allies. The victories against the Empire had inspired hope across the galaxy, and more species began to join the coalition. These new allies brought with them their own technologies, cultures, and strengths, creating a diverse and formidable force. The Alliance's meetings, held in secret locations, were a far cry from the formal and rigid proceedings of the past. Here, leaders of different species sat together as equals, united by a common cause. Baker and his human counterparts worked closely with their alien allies, sharing strategies and integrating their forces into a cohesive whole. Among the new allies were the Tikal, a race of insectoid beings known for their strategic brilliance and advanced bioengineering. The Tikal's knowledge of organic technology proved invaluable, allowing humanity to develop new forms of biological warfare and self-repairing armor. Another ally, the Seraphim, a species of ethereal energy beings, offered insights into non-physical forms of combat, including energy manipulation and psychic warfare. Preparing for the final battle. Despite these advancements and the growing strength of the coalition, there was a growing sense of dread among humanity's leadership. The Empire had been quiet for too long, and Baker knew that this silence was not a sign of weakness, but of preparation. The next battle would be the decisive one, and there was little doubt that the Empire would bring its full might to bear. Baker's nights were sleepless, filled with endless meetings and strategic discussions. He reviewed every plan, every possible scenario, knowing that the slightest mistake could lead to humanity's annihilation. The weight of responsibility was immense, but he bore it without complaint. This was what he had been trained for, what he had spent his entire life preparing for. As the days turned into weeks, the tension grew. The coalition's forces were ready, their ships and soldiers stationed at key points throughout the galaxy, but still, the Empire did not move. It was as if they were waiting, watching, biding their time for the perfect moment to strike. A moment of reflection. In the midst of the preparations, Baker found a rare moment of solitude. He stood on the observation deck of his flagship, gazing out at the stars. Each one represented a world, a life, a future that could be lost if they failed. The enormity of the task before him was almost overwhelming, but he knew he couldn't afford to falter now. His thoughts drifted to the people he had lost, the friends, comrades, and family members who had given their lives for this cause. Their sacrifices had not been in vain, but Baker knew that more would be lost before this war was over. The thought weighed heavily on him, but it also steeled his resolve. As he stood there, the door to the observation deck slid open and Captain Harrison entered. The veteran pilot, who had led the daring assault on the Empire's flagship, had become one of Baker's closest confidants. Despite the gravity of the situation, Harrison's presence was always a source of comfort. "Couldn't sleep?" Harrison asked, stepping up beside Baker. "Not with what's coming," Baker replied, his voice low. "We're on the brink, Harrison." The next move could decide everything. Harrison nodded, his expression serious. "I know, but we've done everything we can. We've prepared our people, our allies. When the time comes, we'll be ready." Baker sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I just hope it's enough." Harrison looked out at the stars, a determined glint in his eyes. "It will be. We've faced impossible odds before, and we've come out on top. This time won't be any different." Baker allowed himself a small smile. Harrison's confidence was infectious, and in that moment, he felt a spark of hope. They had come so far, fought so hard, and now they were about to face their greatest challenge yet. But they would do it together, and that made all the difference. The Empire's signal. Just as Baker was beginning to feel a sliver of peace, the comms officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Commander, we've just received a transmission from the Empire. It's a direct message from their Emperor." Baker and Harrison exchanged a look before heading to the bridge. The time had come. The Empire was ready to make its move, and whatever happened next would determine the fate of the galaxy. As Baker activated the transmission, the image of the Hazari Emperor appeared on the screen. His face was cold, emotionless, his eyes filled with a dangerous determination. "People of Earth," the Emperor began, his voice echoing through the bridge. "You have defied the will of the Galactic Empire, and for that you will be destroyed. But I am not without mercy. Surrender now, and your annihilation will be swift and painless. Resist, and you will suffer the full wrath of our power. The choice is yours." Baker's jaw clenched as he listened to the Emperor's words. The moment of truth had arrived. With a calm, steely voice, he gave his response. "Emperor, we will never surrender. We will fight for our freedom, for our home, and for the future of all who stand with us. If you want to test the strength of humanity, then come. We're ready. The transmission ended, and a heavy silence settled over the bridge. Baker turned to his crew, his expression resolute. Prepare for battle. The Empire is coming. The Empire strikes, the final preparations. With the Empire's intentions now clear, Commander Baker wasted no time in mobilizing the full might of Earth's forces and their coalition allies. The time for waiting was over. The galaxy's future would be decided in the battle that was about to unfold. Across the stars, fleets were being readied, weapons charged, and soldiers steeled themselves for the fight of their lives. In the heart of the solar system, Earth was transformed into a fortress. Orbital platforms bristling with weaponry ringed the planet, while fleets of ships hovered in defensive formations, ready to intercept any threat. On the ground, massive anti-orbital cannons were prepared to unleash their fury on any enemy that dared to approach. Every available resource had been committed to the defense of humanity's home, and the coalition's forces had taken up positions at strategic points throughout the system, creating a layered defense designed to repel even the most determined assault. A message of hope. In the hours leading up to the battle, Baker addressed the people of Earth and their allies one final time. His image was broadcast to every screen, every comm device, and every public square across the coalition's territories. He spoke with a calm determination, his words carrying the weight of the moment. People of Earth, and all who stand with us, Baker began, his voice resonating with strength. We face our darkest hour, but we do not face it alone. We stand united, not just as humans, but as a coalition of free beings who refuse to bow to tyranny. The Empire believes they can crush us, that their power is absolute, but they do not understand the strength of our resolve, the fire that burns in our hearts. We fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of all who dream of freedom. We fight for the right to live, to choose our own destiny. Today, we show the galaxy what it means to be truly free. As his message spread, it was met with cheers, tears, and renewed determination. Across the galaxy, people prepared themselves for what was to come, knowing that the battle ahead would test them like never before. The Empire's arrival. The wait did not last long. Within hours of Baker's address, the first signs of the Empire's approach were detected. At the edge of the solar system, an enormous fleet emerged from the depths of space. It was a sight to behold. Thousands of ships, ranging from sleek fighters to massive battleships, filled the void, their formations precise and unyielding. The Hazari had arrived, and they had brought with them the full might of the Galactic Empire. On the bridge of his command ship, Baker watched the tactical displays as the Empire's fleet advanced. It was an overwhelming force, but it was not unexpected. The coalition's forces were ready, and they had one advantage the Empire did not, the element of surprise. All units, prepare to engage, Baker ordered, his voice steady. Remember your training, trust in your comrades, and fight with everything you have. This is our moment. Let's show them what we're made of. The battle begins. As the Empire's ships crossed into the outer defenses of the solar system, the battle began in earnest. The void of space was suddenly alive with the barrages of missiles. Energy cannons fired beams of focused light, and fighter squadrons darted through the chaos, engaging the enemy with precision and fury. The Empire responded in kind, their ships firing back with devastating power. Massive capital ships led the charge, their heavy weapons tearing through the coalition's defenses with brutal efficiency. The Hazari commanders, confident in their superiority, pressed forward, seeking to overwhelm their opponents through sheer force. But the coalition was ready. Utilizing advanced tactics and the latest in human and allied technology, they struck back hard. Cloaked ships appeared from nowhere, delivering crippling blows to key enemy vessels before vanishing back into the shadows. Fleets worked in perfect coordination, executing complex maneuvers that allowed them to exploit weaknesses in the Empire's formations. The turning point. For hours, the battle raged, neither side willing to give an inch. The solar system became a war zone, with debris from destroyed ships littering the battlefield. But despite the ferocity of the fighting, it was clear that the Empire's sheer numbers were beginning to take their toll. The Coalition's forces were being pushed back, their defenses slowly but surely being worn down. Realizing that the battle was reaching a critical point, Baker knew he had to act. The Empire's main fleet was focusing its efforts on breaking through the Coalition's center, where the defenses were beginning to falter. If they succeeded, Earth would be vulnerable, and the war would be lost. "Captain Harrison, get your squadron ready," Baker commanded over the comms. "We're going to hit them where it hurts." Harrison, ever the reliable pilot, responded immediately. "Understood, sir. We're on it." Baker's plan was daring, almost reckless, but it was their best chance. He ordered a feigned retreat, pulling the Coalition's central forces back, drawing the Empire's fleet deeper into the system. As the Empire advanced, believing they had the upper hand, they left their flanks exposed. It was then that Harrison's squadron, along with several other elite units, launched their attack. They struck from the sides and rear, targeting the Empire's command ships and critical support vessels. The sudden, coordinated assault caught the Hazari off guard, and in the chaos that followed, several of their key ships were destroyed. The Empire's desperation. The loss of their command ships threw the Empire's forces into disarray. Without centralized leadership, their formations began to break apart, and the Coalition seized the opportunity to press their advantage. Human and allied ships surged forward, pushing the Hazari back, turning the tide of the battle. But the Empire was not defeated yet. In a desperate bid to regain control, the Hazari deployed their ultimate weapon, the one that had erased entire colonies. It was a device of unimaginable power, capable of annihilating everything within a vast radius. Baker watched in horror as the weapon was activated. He had hoped they wouldn't use it, but now there was no choice. They had to stop it, or everything would be lost. "All units, focus fire on that weapon," Baker shouted. "We have to destroy it before it can charge." The Coalition's forces redirected their attacks, pouring everything they had into the weapon. Missiles, energy beams, and even kamikaze runs were used in a desperate attempt to stop the device from reaching full power. A sacrifice for survival. Despite their best efforts, the weapon continued to charge, its energy levels climbing dangerously high. It was clear that conventional attacks wouldn't be enough. The only option left was a direct strike, one that would require a great sacrifice. Captain Harrison, realizing what needed to be done, made the decision. "Commander Baker, I'll take care of it," he said, his voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. Baker's heart sank. He knew what Harrison meant, but there was no other way. "Harrison, are you sure?" he asked, his voice heavy with emotion. "It's the only way," Harrison replied. "I'll see you on the other side, Commander." Without waiting for a response, Harrison pushed his fighter to full throttle, heading straight for the Empire's weapon. As he closed in, he armed his ship's entire payload, knowing that it would be enough to destroy the device, but only if he got close enough. The rest of the Coalition's forces did their best to clear a path, buying Harrison the time he needed. As he approached the weapon, he locked in his trajectory, a smile crossing his face as he thought of his comrades, of the people he was fighting to protect. "Goodbye, everyone," Harrison whispered, before his fighter collided with the weapon. The explosion was immense, a blinding flash that lit up the entire battlefield. The weapon was destroyed, along with Harrison and the surrounding enemy ships. The shockwave rippled through space, throwing both friend and foe off balance. Victory, but at a cost. As the light faded, the battlefield fell eerily silent. The Empire's fleet, now leaderless and without their ultimate weapon, began to retreat. The Coalition, though battered and exhausted, had won. But it was a bittersweet victory. The cost had been high, and the loss of Captain Harrison weighed heavily on everyone who had known him. Baker stood on the bridge, his heart heavy with grief, but also with pride. Harrison had given everything for this victory, and because of him, Earth and its allies had survived. But Baker knew that this was not the end. The Empire had been dealt a serious blow, but they were not defeated. The war would continue, and more sacrifices would be needed before it was over. For now, though, there was relief and a chance to mourn the fallen. The battle had been won, but the fight for freedom was far from over. The aftermath and the rising threat mourning the fallen. In the days following the battle, Earth and its allies took time to mourn the fallen and honor their sacrifices. Captain Harrison's heroic last stand became a symbol of the unyielding human spirit, inspiring not just those on Earth, but across the coalition. Memorials were erected in his name, and his story was shared far and wide, becoming a rallying cry for those who would continue to fight against the Empire's tyranny. Commander Baker found himself at one of these memorials, standing alone as he stared at the names engraved in stone. Thousands of names, each one representing a life cut short by the horrors of war. But it was Harrison's name that stood out the most to him. The loss weighed heavily on Baker's heart, a constant reminder of the sacrifices that had been made and the ones that would inevitably follow. As he stood there, deep in thought, Corvus, the Hazari defector who had first warned Baker of the Empire's plans, approached him. The two men had formed an unlikely bond over the course of the war, united by their shared goal of stopping the Empire. "You did well, Commander," Corvus said, his voice tinged with sadness. "Harrison would be proud of what you accomplished." Baker nodded, though his expression remained somber. "He was a good man. We lost too many good people." Corvus placed a hand on Baker's shoulder, a rare gesture of comfort from the usually stoic Hazari. "This war isn't over, Baker. But because of men like Harrison, we still have a chance. We can't let their sacrifices be in vain." Baker looked at Corvus, his resolve hardening once more. "You're right. We'll keep fighting. For them, for everyone. Rebuilding and reorganizing." With the immediate threat of the Empire's invasion thwarted, the coalition turned its attention to rebuilding and reorganizing its forces. The battle had taken a significant toll, and it was clear that they needed to regroup before the Empire could strike again. Earth's defenses were reinforced, and new alliances were forged as more species, inspired by the coalition's victory, joined the fight. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to repair the damage done during the battle, as well as to develop new technologies that could give the coalition an edge in future engagements. The data recovered from the Empire's fallen ships provided valuable insights into their technology, allowing the coalition to make significant advancements in their own weapons and defenses. But the work was not just about preparing for war. Efforts were also made to stabilize and rebuild the planets and colonies that had been ravaged by the conflict. Humanitarian missions were launched to provide aid to those in need, and the coalition's leaders made a concerted effort to show that they were fighting not just for survival, but for a better future for all.